Thank you, Joe. I'm going to do a screen share and go to our slideshow. I'm John Breckenfeld, and Kobe is my colleague and co-presenter. We're at HUF's, that's Hanguk University of Foreign Studies, the Seoul campus. And this is our presentation title. We're really going to focus on how we are using presentations differently. We have quite distinct approaches to using presentations with students. And so there are some similarities. For us, we both teach communicative English in the same department. And right now, spring semester, the focus is more listening and speaking. But I teach intermediate level only, and Kobe teaches only advanced level classes. And we have 4 class sections, both of us, and about 120 students each for each semester. And go ahead, Kobe.
Sure. And as John said, we're doing some things very similarly and a lot of things very differently, right? So we're focusing on student presentations, but John basically does all his presentations in groups, and he's using something called Pechakucha. If I mispronounce that, please let me know. I don't know how it's pronounced at all, right? But I tried. And then I'm basically just doing individual presentations. That's it. And basically going from kind of low stakes to high stakes, from having them just talk together in groups informally and not being really assessed, to having later high stakes assessments where they're talking in front of the whole group and in front of the whole class. So that's one of the big differences, and that's what we're going to focus on. And while we're kind of presenting, we'd like you to kind of think about kind of the why do you or why don't you do presentations in your classes, and then the what do you do in your class, or what would you do if you were giving presentations, because that's kind of what we're going to introduce, the why and the how, along with a few other things of what we're doing, and then we'd like to have some discussions afterwards. All right, so I'm going to throw it back to John, and he's going to talk about what he does.
Okay, so I'm going to introduce the why, the how, and starting with the what. In regard to student presentations. The what, simply what is Pechakucha? And I'll give a very brief description, 5 points. So you use 20 slides total, 20 seconds per slide, and you should tell us a story. These are the basic it's the foundation of Pechakucha, the Pechakucha approach or framework. And so I go kind of extreme, and I say for my students, images only and no text added. And so I'll explain why I add those 2 requirements with my students. I'll explain that soon. So why do I use Pechakucha? And so the creativity and novelty of it are very fun and interesting for students. So I have about 120 students, and 2 of them said they used Pechakucha before in high school. So essentially all of them have never done Pechakucha and maybe didn't even know what it was before this semester. So the visual impact is really fun and interesting for students. In Korea, Instagram is maybe the biggest social media platform, so everybody likes looking at photos and images. And the way I do it, it's like a photo slideshow with their voice narrating what we see on the screen. And the structural simplicity is very useful for everyone, and it takes practice for sure, where you time what you're going to say so it matches the 20-second time limit per slide. And it's not boring, ideally. And I know in the past when I've done presentations without using Pechakucha, there's usually too much text. It's hard to read everything that students try to put onto a slide, how much they type, and sometimes they stay on a slide for a couple minutes. And so Pechakucha, the structure and just the rules of it make it fun and interesting. And so how do we use Pechakucha? I only do team presentations, and I have 3 or 4 students creating one Pechakucha presentation, and it is modified. There's a little bit of flexibility. So in the end, they're responsible for 5 slides each. And if you take 5 slides times 20 seconds, they're speaking for less than 2 minutes. So if you look at it like that, it's not a huge amount of time. The tricky part is the 20-second time limit and practicing so you are saying your message effectively in 20 seconds per slide. We do about a 3-week process. So I start with a demo where I do my own PechaKucha and I present it live and then tell the students, this is what you're going to do. You and your team will create your own PechaKucha presentation. And so 3 weeks gives us time in the classroom where they work together and they figure everything out. They have plenty of time. And then on their own, they're able to work on their own individual part. So they don't have to meet together outside of class. That is key. That's a big burden. Students don't like group projects because they have to fix their schedule and meet together in their free time. And this way, they don't have to do that. So we use Google. And so the storyboard and slideshow are very useful because they just adjust the share settings. And then all 3 or 4 students are working together on the same document or the same slideshow file. And I have an example that I share with students. I can show you those examples a little bit later in this presentation. And we focus really a lot on the storyboard. We spend 2 weeks mostly on the storyboard. The slideshow is the final step because the storyboard, how I do it, I split it up like 2 columns where they put the images on one side and then their notes or potential script on the other side. And then to do the slideshow, all you do is just copy and paste. It literally takes 2 minutes to move your photos over to your slideshow. So audience participation, I have 4 teams together in the classroom. So all of them present, and so they see 3 other teams give their PechaKucha presentation. And then they need to choose 1 image per presentation. They saw the image that stood out the most. So they're seeing 20 and they select 1 and they just simply describe what the image is and then write 1 or 2 sentences to explain why it was the most impactful. And they also select a short phrase that they heard. So a few words, it doesn't have to be a sentence, a short phrase that one of the speakers said, and they also write 1 or 2 sentences to tell me why this phrase stood out to them. So it's something that they saw and something they heard. That's the audience participation. It is a very small part of the grade as well. Micro to macro. So the micro is like a self-introduction or story of self. That was presentation 1 we already did a few weeks ago. And so that's very individualized, very casual, very friendly topic. The macro is going to be in May in a few weeks, and that's a bigger topic, maybe a societal or even global issue. And for the macro, I really will focus more on the cohesive storytelling feature of PechaKucha. From slide 1 to slide 20, the teams, they want to connect and have a thread that goes across the whole slideshow and have a unified story. The micro, the first one, it's more 3 or 4 stories that are put together and they are connected to the same topic or theme, but the second time around, we'll try to make it a more cohesive start to finish story. All right, Kobe, go ahead with yours.
Okay, and I'm about to do something I tell my students never to do, which is apologize, right? And I'm about to apologize for all the background noise. Basically my whole neighborhood's under construction and they were not supposed to kind of do it on Saturday morning. But so if you hear something, there's nothing I can do in the background. So I just want to do that. But what I'm going to do now is talk about what I'm doing. And I'm going to start with the who and the what. So I think it's important to kind of talk about who our students are. And we have to remember a lot of them are coming to us with different experiences and skill sets. A lot know how to present, have presented in English. Some have never presented in English and never in front of a group in kind of a second language. So it's very difficult. We can't just kind of throw them into the fire and assume that because they're at a university, because they're in a higher level class, that they know kind of a lot of the basics. They might not, right? And we also have to remember, but a lot of students have not been in classrooms, at least in Korea for a few years, right? They've been on Zoom, they've been online, and just kind of being in front of people and talking in front of people, it was a little intimidating. So when I returned to the classroom last fall, towards the end of the semester, I kind of realized that. So I kind of got back to basics with kind of teaching presentation skills, because I figured a lot of it was just kind of overwhelming for them. So what am I trying to accomplish in my presentations? I'm trying to build them up, kind of build up their comfort and confidence, and then eventually do presentations and evaluate. And as John said, I'm also going to kind of go from a micro to a macro level, and I'll explain that in a moment. But the why am I doing presentations? Basically, I think that presentations, and we can all agree, are very practical, both kind of in university and later in life. It's kind of a skill that they are going to have to develop, and whether they're going to be presenting in English or not, it depends on their career choice, but definitely kind of learning how to speak in front of a group is very important. And that's one of the reasons. And then the other reason is basically as a form of assessment. Everybody, again, here probably has different kind of system that they're working in. We have to evaluate students. We are required to grade them on a curve, right? So we do need some form of assessment that's very kind of clear and transparent. And I think kind of a presentation with a very clear rubric allows me to do that. Next, I'm going to talk about the where, obviously. So again, because students haven't been in a classroom, because a lot of them are coming to us with different experiences, I start by kind of having them present just at their desk in an informal way in front of small groups, right? They don't even know they're really presenting, but I'm kind of giving them topics and structures to talk about for extended amount of time, beginning just with 30 seconds all the way later on to, a minute presentation. And most of the topics are personal, and these are not really being evaluated. They're getting more comfortable with speaking in front of people in the second language. And then eventually I'm moving kind of from in small groups at their desk into in front of the classroom. And that's kind of the goal, kind of go from a level of high comfort and low stakes to kind of something that's a little more difficult for all of us to do, which is talking in front of a group. So that's the where. The next, I'm going to talk about the when. And basically, I'm doing this throughout the whole semester, right? So from week one, obviously, is just a lot of students are adding and dropping. A lot of you guys experience the same thing, or finding out which classroom they are. So, but starting in week 2, I'm beginning with these kind of informal kind of mini presentations, and I take it all the way through the end of the semester. So that's the when. I'm basically doing it the whole semester. And then if we move on and we talk about the how, as I said, I'm basically going from this micro level to a macro level. So talking about themselves in small groups, then later on talking about academic topics in front of the classroom. And I start with personal topics in the small group setting, and then later I'm moving to academic topics in the small group setting, right? So they're talking about things that in the book, and these begin kind of, I do start assessing these, right? But this is basically just based on, are they doing it? There is no actual kind of rubric or things that I'm looking at. And then we move towards kind of giving an opinion. And this is kind of an opinion presentation that they are going to do in front of the classroom. And this will be graded. This is worth more points. But again, the whole point of what I'm trying to do is kind of build a presentation, okay? So I want them to go from a very comfortable thing of talking about themselves in a very comfortable environment in a small group, which even for a lot of students this semester wasn't very comfortable at the very beginning, to then kind of talking about giving their personal opinion on academic topic in front of the class. And then finally, the last presentation is basically a traditional kind of 4 to 5 minute presentation, an academic presentation in front of the class. And again, this is going to be done at the very end of the semester. But my whole goal here is basically I'm starting them off with talking about themselves, learning how to kind of building upon a structure and building on the kind of what they know to eventually get to having them do a longer kind of high stakes presentation in front of the classroom. And is this anything very novel? No, but I think it's just important that as we return to the classroom and as we have students coming, that we remember that not everything should be taken for granted, and we should kind of start kind of at the very beginning and build things up. So that's basically the end of my presentation right now. But I want to talk about the why not one thing, right? And this is not criticizing John at all about because he only does group presentations. Why don't I do group presentations? Obviously, group presentations are very important in the real world, but I feel like I don't know about elsewhere, but in Korea, we always hear about free riding or free loading, right? So students complain that there's no equal distribution of work. And especially if we're assessing them in a presentation format, I feel like it's just not a fair way to give an accurate assessment. And as we are going to break out into groups, if anybody has any kind of tips for me about how you feel that you can fairly evaluate group presentations, please feel free to pass that along. But that's going to conclude our part of kind of introducing what we do. And what we'd like you to think about now is basically the who are you and who are you teaching? Obviously, you guys know that, right? But then also want you to think about the why. Why do you or don't you do presentations? And then also kind of the what are you doing or what would you do? And I think now, depending on comfort level, either we'll kind of stay here and discuss together, or if people are afraid of being recorded, maybe we can go into a breakout room where it's not recorded and kind of just share some information, if that's okay. So.
Okay, so that's a question is, is everyone happy to discuss here and let me keep recording, or would you like to move to a breakout room? If anyone's got any strong feelings, just, I don't know, let me know through the chat, or if you're okay, give you maybe a few seconds to think about it.
So I'm just adding those questions into the chat.
Thank you, John.
As well, sure. So yeah, if we did breakout rooms, it would be, there are, 2 or 3 people per room, or 3 or 4, including
a smaller
personal.
enough group to kind of handle together, maybe, right?
Just stick together.
Yeah. My only concern was just a camera issue, because some people seemed a little, but
I'll
I
go
can
ahead
show
and
this
pause.
on camera. I think anybody can show anything, right?
I'll go ahead and pause the recording, because I think people will probably be coming for your insights and not for me asking questions. So okay, yeah, I'll pause right now.
That sounds good.
So I'll let them take it away.
Okay, so I'll take 2 minutes. I just want to show you the materials that I share with students to help them create their Pechakucha presentation. And first is my sample. This is the Google Slides slideshow I use. And obviously I won't do the full Pechakucha presentation. I'll just quickly, I'll click through all 20 images just fast, and then I'll show you the storyboard. So this is my own kind of self-introduction as well, with my son and a few pics. I'm talking about reading and coffee and exercise and doing fundraiser exercise events and that sort of thing. And so, and my son to finish off the slideshow. So I also have them do a title slide, where that's the only time they do text. And then let me show you the storyboard. And the storyboard is what we spend more time working on. So I have a template at the top, and they should create an outline so you can see slide 1 through 20 or 1 through 21, and then add the images below, and on the left side, they add notes or even type sentences as a part of a script. And so my sample for them, and I split it up to where it would be like, all right, this would be student A doing an intro and a conclusion, and then student B and student C and student D. And then moving down, and you have each image. And then I just put like a title. I didn't add any text as my script. I just sort of wanted to go unscripted a little bit more and rehearsed it. But I wanted to show them I don't encourage you to read full sentences for your speaking part. And I also have them do an image credit, where you can click and go directly to the image if it's online. You can tell me this was shared with you, or you took the image yourself. Right, so that's, once the storyboard is fleshed out, it literally takes, it's just a copy and paste over to the slideshow. It's really very, very simple. And so the issue that I noticed was it wasn't as easy for them to do. The student A does an intro and conclusion. It was more like student A I do all mine, 5 slides, and then student B, 5 slides, student C and student D. They just do all their slides in a row this time around. But for the second presentation, I'm going to make it a requirement where you must be student A who does an intro and a conclusion. So it's a little more of a cohesive connection where you maybe introduce 2 or 3 main points, and then those points are detailed by students B, C, and D. So that was basically, that's it for those extra materials. And we have only 2 or 3 minutes left now. So any final thoughts or any other questions?
Quick question, if I may.
Yeah.
I hate to ask questions like this, John. I hate it, but in real-time terms, how much do you need to do a PechaKucha to go from there is nothing to they're doing it?
Yeah.
How much real time do you think you'd need?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that, because I said, yeah, 3 weeks, and it's not the full lesson for 3 weeks. It's about half of the time. So I'm with my students for 3 periods, which is 2.5 hours, not quite 3 hours. And so each week I give them 60 to 90 minutes working with their team, developing their presentation. So by the end of week 2, I say, like, your storyboard it must be finished. So I can see everything, your team can see everything. And then it's very simple for you to just copy and paste your images into your slideshow. And then the students do need to take time on their own to practice their own speaking part. But they should have, the sooner they finish their speaking part, then we're in the classroom together and they can run through during class 2 or 3 times from start to finish the whole presentation as practice. So does that answer, Stuart?
Yeah, so 60 to 90 minutes across 3 weeks.
And then using the Google materials, they're all able to access the same document in their free time. And so they don't have to meet together outside of class.
Yeah, that exactly answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, good. And great. I think, yeah, it's about time to wrap it up. Kobe, anything else?
No, thank you guys for participating and for your input and questions. We appreciate it. And thank you, Joe, for hosting. So really appreciate it.
Yeah, I will. So I just put a short document that sort of gave an outline of our presentation and the discussion questions, but I will add those sample materials to the Discord. So anyone, you can go there and you can take a look at those, my storyboard sample and my slideshow sample.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. And if you're not on the Discord, please drop in. There's lots of chat going on there. And just thank you. And I'll see you guys around. So I'll be hosting a couple other ones, but thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful
Thank you,
day.
everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, see